welcome to the Bites and Bytes podcast, where we talk about critical infrastructure that feeds us, fuels us, and let's be honest, doesn't get nearly enough attention, food and agriculture. Today's episode is a bit different because today you get to hear directly from a farmer, and not just any farmer, Jonathan Lawler, better known as the punk rock farmer. He's a full-time American farmer based in Indiana, a passionate food security advocate, and an agricultural filmmaker telling the stories most people never heard of. And that's what matters, because when was the last time you actually spoke to a farmer? Or ever? Most people haven't. We're surrounded by commentary and clickbait, but the voices of people who grow the food don't always make it to the mic. Jonathan doesn't lead with stats, he leads with stories about food insecurity, about broken systems, and what happens when tech fails and animals suffer, about everything we romanticize about farming and everything we conveniently ignore. So yes, we talk about cybersecurity, cyber physical risks, and operational technology. Those threads are still there. But this episode is really about listening. Listening to someone who's lived it, lost it, fought back, and kept farming anyways. Jonathan doesn't pull any punches. He's not here to make you comfortable. He's here to make you think. And in a world full of filters, that kind of honesty is something we don't hear nearly enough. Let's get into it. Well, I am absolutely thrilled. This is going to be a really fun episode, so I hope everybody has a snack and a drink. As we do with everybody else, let's start with favorite food and favorite food memory. They do not need to be the same thing. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay. So mine happen to be the same thing. My favorite food is bulgogi, Korean bulgogi or barbecue. And my uncle married a Korean lady by the name of Kicha. And I remember being like 7 years old and having bulgogi for the first time. And the more I ate, the more she made. And she just, but yeah, to this day, that is my favorite food is beef bulgogi. So
that's awesome. That's really delicious. I had the privilege of having dinner with some Korean friends at the time, and when I was working in California, and I went to Koreatown in LA, and I had it for the first time there. I also had soju, which put me on my butt later on that night, big time, because, it's just like sake. You just kind of don't know what you're getting into until you stand up. So, Jonathan, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners so they know who you are and what you're about.
So, my name is Jonathan Lawler, and I'm a farmer. I own a media company that specializes in telling the story of agriculture. We also do marketing for animal enterprise. For the most part, every once in a while, we just do a random, business likes what we do, and they contact us and ask us to help them out. But we mostly specialize in video storytelling, and we do a lot of social media management. Right now, we manage about 147 social media accounts for companies. They have no idea. I mean, people have no idea that they're being managed, but we manage them.
And what do you grow on your farm? I know you've told me this, but they don't know.
So in the past, we specialized in 5 crops. We would grow around 20 to 30 acres of watermelons, about 15 acres of cantaloupes. We always grew lots of tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers. But we would always, we'd get contracts. So we've grown jalapenos on contract. We've grown bib lettuce on contract. We grow the scorpion peppers on contract, which those, you have to wear gloves when you pick them. Yeah, but my favorite crop by far is tomatoes. And this year we have as large a crop, I think, as we can do of a genetically engineered tomato. And it's purple. And it's purple. You cut it open, it's purple all the way through. There's no other tomato like this in the world.
Anything special about it, like nutrition wise? Or
it was crossed with a snapdragon, which is an edible flower. So I mean, people hear genetically engineered, they think, it's crossed with a fish or something, or bacteria. This one was actually just crossed with another plant, but it's very healthy. It tastes pretty good, and visually it's very appealing. So it looks good in salads.
I don't know if I've had a purple tomato. I think I've had a black one though. So and I do like those. I feel like they are less, stressful on my stomach. I don't know.
I mean, some have higher acid levels than others. I will say this. The most tomatoes, you have the Cherokee purple, and you cut it open, it's still going to be red on the inside. Most tomatoes are going to be red or yellow on the inside.
Wow. I mean, now I know more about tomatoes. And it's so funny you said that, because the only good thing I like about summer for the most part, because I don't really care for heat, tomato sandwiches. That's where it's at. It's going to be good summer.
It's my favorite crop to grow.
Tomatoes are fun. I like it because anybody can grow tomatoes, really. They're not that difficult in comparison.
That's what I try. I try to tell people that people will come to my farm and they'll see 3 acres of tomatoes, but there's 15 15,000 plants per acre. To them, that might as well be 20 acres of tomatoes.
Yeah.
And they're very curious the difference between like what we do in a home. We treat every row like it's one tomato plant, basically. And, you know, I go into these gardening groups and to hear people talk about growing tomatoes as if you need like a degree in botany. And a tomato is one of the ultimately easy plants to grow. But there's so much. I always tell people, be careful of those gardening pages because there's a lot of not good information.
Correct. Yeah. I remember my grandfather used to have a huge tomato garden and he just did it on one side of a shed. So it was a very small area. But the way he did it, he strung them up kind of vertically. So they had plenty of places to climb. And I would just walk through and eat them when I was a kid. There's nothing better than that smell of a tomato vine. Like, they make candles with that smell. And yes, I own them because I just really like that smell. It's just something really fresh. And anyways, you know what I mean? Right. It's something about tomato plants. They stand out kind of like the ocean does when we drive by the sea, for sure.
Usually the smell you're smelling is they're toxic. I mean, they're a nightshade. So
yes, they are.
You can't eat the plant itself. And we have to be careful with our workers that they're picking barehanded. So you'll get, you know, gardeners will say, oh, I got a little bit of stuff on them. Our guys will come out of the field and their hands and their forearms will be black. And it's just everything coming off of those tomatoes. And I had one guy actually have an allergic reaction to them.
That's awful.
You know, while he was in the fields. Yeah, it's definitely different when you have lots of them.
Yes, of course. Absolutely. And it's kind of weird that I like the smell of a plant that could kill you.
Well,
Take
you
that for what it is.
a lot of it to kill you, but it is toxic.
So Jonathan actually goes by the punk rock farmer. Jonathan, you want to talk about how you got there to that name because it's a good story.
Yeah, so I didn't even give myself that name. It was an inner city community center, and we had started our nonprofit farm where we were donating produce. Basically, I went there and talked to them, and they were working with a university, and the university was having them do study upon study of whether or not to put an urban farm in or not. And so he talked to me about it, and I was like, well, do you have the soil test? What's the soil like? And so he gave me the soil test, and the lead was under the parts per million we were okay to plant. I said, well, why don't we just get some tractors here and plow it up and start planting this spring? And you can tell that university to take their feasibility studies and put them where the sun don't shine. And he was all about that. We actually brought a couple tractors out because there were a lot of kids there. So we had two of our big F-350s pull them out, Kubota and a Massey Ferguson. And we were running the tractors, and at the time my hair was a lot longer than it is now. But it was shaved completely, like on the sides. And I think I was wearing a Misfits shirt, and we had punk music playing in one of the trucks while we were working. And I remember it really clearly. One of the kids started calling me the punk rock farmer. And the reporter, there was more than one reporter there, but one of the reporters picked up on that. And then a young woman who followed what our nonprofit farm did actually created a page called the Punk Rock Farmer. It was kind of interesting because she had made like a spray painted wall that had like a big anarchy symbol on it. It got up to like 5,000 followers, and she contacted us and was like, you should probably be doing this. Well, I was the executive director of the farm, and I was always getting in trouble for stuff I said. I mean, all the time.
I don't see that for you at all, Jonathan. I don't see you being disruptor or trouble at all.
So my wife was like, you know, if you're the punk rock farmer, you can kind of say whatever you want. Just don't include the farm. I kind of took it over and I let it sit for a little while. And then like right before I think COVID hit, I started utilizing it more because I was getting really pissed off with things I was seeing. The amount of waste there is in the nonprofit sector and stuff like that. So and that from there, I mean, my nonprofit work has taken me places where farmers shouldn't go. Is how I would put it. It's one of those things where I'm just kind of like, wow. I was just like, wow, so I got invited by Liberty University. They had a stock car they sponsored at a NASCAR race at the Brickyard 400. It was just very interesting because that's Rick Hendrick's team. I mean, he's actually the team owner. So, but I didn't realize that it was also Rick Hendricks that had invited us. I'm just thinking I got to go watch a NASCAR race. And we get there and they're like, do you want to watch from the pits? And I was like, hell yeah. And we went up into the pit, and sure enough, Rick Hendricks sitting right there, and he introduces himself. We just started talking, and Jeff Gordon comes up because he's there, but he's not driving. Yeah. And I realized, like, here's a guy I've watched 1,000 times, things like that. I mean, I've been lucky enough to work with Mike Rowe. I've worked with RFD TV some, doing interviews about food insecurity. Small Town, I think the name of the show, it was on CMT when we did that show with them, but it was Small Town Big Deal. But it was kind of Mike's people that we really got to know, some of the producers and the behind the scenes folks, and talking to one of them, they're like, you're really good at talking about agriculture and you make it exciting. I mean, you make me want to know more about agriculture. So maybe this is something you want to pursue. So I took some online film classes, but what really helped is I got hooked up with some more like just film guys that they're not, they approach it more from an artistic standpoint. They're not, you know,
not
we have
Hollywood.
we have like 2 very expensive cinema cameras that we utilize, but we also have a couple of cameras that are more like for just jump out of the car and start filming. We actually use those more. And I feel like we can do a better job, you know, versus having to set up the cinema cameras and get them ready. And I'm not technical enough to know about them, but I know what needs to be filmed when we hit a farm. I know the questions we need to ask the farmer. There's questions that people never ask them. And America's view, a farmer is a 63-year-old man in overalls standing next to either a cornfield or soybean field and a combine. There's nothing else to the American farmers. They don't realize the ranchers, the dairy folks, you know, the produce growers, the beekeepers, all the different aspects. I mean, there's a bunch of people that raise rabbits, you know, commercially. People that raise ducks commercially.
There's people that raise llamas and emus.
I mean, it's one of those things that I see it and it's just like, man, there's so much to agriculture people don't understand.
Thanks for hanging out with me and Jonathan on the Bites of Bites podcast. If you're enjoying the conversation, or if it's making you think a little bit differently about food, farming, or infrastructure, take a second to like, share, and send this episode to someone who needs to hear it. We all have a role to play in critical infrastructure, especially when it comes to food and agriculture, so seriously, I'm so glad you're here. Quick reminder, I have a book coming out soon. If you want the inside scoop, early updates, giveaways, or event news, you can sign up at andsandsage.com, and that's where everything will be happening first. And if you're the type who likes a bit of commentary with your cybersecurity, I'm also writing regularly over on Substack. You'll find that link in the show notes. One of my recent pieces about the USDA farm security plan stirred up some really great conversation and a few side eyes, of course. So check that out too. Now back to the show.
I toured an alligator farm. Like I wanted to know, how did these guys make their money? Well, it's not from the meat. I can promise you that. It's from their skin. Their skin's worth a lot of money. And you can thank the alligator farming industry for the fact that alligators were on the brink of extinction. And now there's more alligators in the United States than there ever has been before. You know, North America pre-Columbus didn't have as many alligators as we have now.
Yeah. Fun fact, I've been to one of those farms actually when I was a kid. There's a picture of me holding a baby alligator.
Yeah.
But I remember not being afraid. I just remember thinking this thing's weird. And because I was 7, I mean, what are you going to do? You're 7. You don't think everything's cool or weird. Yeah. It's interesting how the dynamics, you're right, about how we define agriculture. Is it big ag? Is that how we see it? Is it small family farm, you know, kind of vibes? Sure. But nobody actually thinks about the subtleties of the different aspects of agriculture.
I know you're heavily involved with LinkedIn. Don't let my observations of LinkedIn.
No, it's fine. I get it.
But to me, people will see a farmer telling a story on Facebook or on Instagram, and he's in a big tractor and he's in a big field, and people will be like, that's terrible. That's big ag. And I'm like, that's not where you don't find big ag on Facebook. You find big ag on LinkedIn.
That's true.
Where I actually listened to a woman. She wrote out this, I'm connected with her. I don't know her. I don't remember her name, but I'd say this to her face. She had these 4 people up on the stage, and she said the amount of agriculture, these people are leaders in the agricultural world, and they know so much about ag. This is so important that they're here. And they were all 3 bankers. They weren't farmers. They were bankers in the ag industry.
Yeah.
Which is probably a problem that the ag industry suffers from. Is I've suffered from working with an ag bank that just raked me over the coals.
Yeah.
And I just thought how disconnected you are. And here you are is front and center. The place you work at has farm in its title, and you're that disconnected.
It's not indicative of just the agriculture industry. We all have misunderstanding and misinformation about every industry we're in. But I do find that for agriculture specifically, it's because it's a critical infrastructure in which everybody needs it for various reasons, not just to eat. That is dangerous. That is really dangerous. And I will put my hand up and be the first one to say, I don't know everything about agriculture. I know enough to help people be secure and resilient, but I learn something every day from everyone I talk to when it comes to ag. And I love it because, first of all, it's keeping the Alzheimer's off. Let's be honest, Jonathan. And secondly, it's fun. Agriculture's fun. It's supposed to be fun. You're working with the land. You're working with animals. You're dealing with climate. You're dealing with other people. You're dealing with bugs. You're dealing with all these different interesting things that aren't just like, I'm in a cubicle and I'm talking to whoever next to me. Right. It's so much different. And I think it's an honor to be in the industry and myself in this small little corner I sit in. But you're right. It's definitely misleading in a lot of places. I do find that LinkedIn has a great presence with ranchers. They're there and they're saying some stuff, and they're definitely saying some stuff that needs to be said. It's difficult to watch sometimes because I watch my community in the cybersecurity space be completely misinformed and misunderstand what agriculture is because they bought into what we see as what the traditional American farm looks like.
Yeah.
And it's not that. And it's not entirely that. There are sectors that are like that, but it's not entirely like that. And it's hard. In fact,
that's what the things that I have to deal with every day, the things that I have to listen to people say.
Do you have a personal least favorite right now that you've been listening to?
I like Joel Salatin. I like him as the fact that he gets people excited about agriculture. Mm-hmm. What I don't like is, like, I nicknamed him the soundbite farmer. Somebody takes his soundbite, and that's what he does. I mean, he likes to throw out like these wild sound bites without any of the nuance conversation that needs to be had there.
The bumper sticker conversation, basically.
The whole chicken, culling of chickens. I disagree with the USDA going out several miles and killing chickens. But Joel Salatin throws this thing out there that said that the basis of animal husbandry, of sound animal husbandry, has always been breeding the chickens together that survive, or breeding animals that survive a disease.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, I guess.
It does, until you look at the nuance around the highly pathogenic avian bird flu. You were lucky if any of your flock lived. And if they did live, it was around 10%. So if you start breeding that 10%, you run into something called genetic bottlenecking. Maybe I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying there needs to be an all of above approach, not just one way. Let's just not blame the USDA. Let's look at the real solutions, especially when the USDA was doing what was known as best practices.
Yeah.
It's just hard. And
hard.
I had a friend that lost his entire turkey flock. For me, that was just nobody took into account how bad that was for him.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to cull it, but he literally told me, he said he went out and found 6 dead turkeys. And then within 12 hours, there was 30.
Yeah.
And then he said half his flock was dying. And so they made the choice to cull the entire flock. And he agreed with it. He's not some conspiracy guy. He's just a guy trying to raise turkeys, and he had them on contract. And the other thing is, people were like, well, these farmers and whoever's getting rich off of them, his insurance does not cover the full amount of the bird. It's probably better for him to take that bird to market for the full price than it is to do what happened there.
It doesn't take into account either the mental health toll it takes on a farmer. They don't want to. They don't want to. I know they're raising the animals to eventually become food on someone's plate, but that doesn't mean they don't care. Those animals live a good life and they invest emotionally into them as well. I mean, sure, they might name them or they might have a favorite. That's fine. It's human nature. But the fact that you have to take out an entire flock, it's hurtful. It's financially, it's stressful. Emotionally, it's stressful. If there's children involved, you have to explain what's going on to them. That's a whole other set of emotional distress. There's so many factors into this. And this is where I get frustrated as a cybersecurity professional, just to take it to a different angle. if this happens because of tampering of IoT sensors for chicken monitoring or turkey monitoring, something like that, and animals start getting sick because their feed is disrupted or something happens with it or chemicals are introduced. Yep. This is happening in real time. Like, this is the stage one. Like, granted, this is avian flu and it's being spread by wild birds and other things as well. But like, we've already got examples of how we need to stop stuff. And here we are getting stressed about the political nature of it, when in reality, we need to talk about what's going on with the farmers, because they're the backbones. Who else is going to raise turkeys or chickens? You know, who else? Nobody's going to do that in their backyard. And yeah, people are like, I'll go get chickens.
Oh, and that's the thing. Like, I was at Walmart the other day and somebody recognized, I didn't know who this person was, but they're like, oh, I watch your videos and I follow you. You're real. I mean, they went way out of the way to tell me how they love how I go after certain things and this and that. But then he was like, what do you have to buy from here? And I'm like, you mean at the grocery store? And, you know, he's like, I just assume you wouldn't buy meat or anything here. I'm like, well, I don't have any cattle right now. And even when I do, I mean, we probably keep a half of aside, and then everything else we sell. I can't grow pineapples. I can't grow oranges here. I mean, the thought that you can become completely self-sufficient. I mean, there's people that can do it. Don't get me wrong, but that is not an easy life.
That whole thing.
That is rough to try to be self-sufficient.
I'm all for the people who want to make their own butter and want to milk their own cows and do all the things. That's great. If that's the way you want your life to be. But that is a lifestyle.
Absolutely.
That is a lifestyle, you know. And I've talked to other farmers too, Jonathan. And they're like, yeah, I totally go buy meat at the store and I'm a beef farmer. They're like, hey, I'm supporting the industry. And I thought about it for a minute. I was like, yeah, that's true. You are supporting the industry. Who knows if it's your particular cow? We don't know.
Right.
But I thought that was really interesting to think about. And I had never really thought about it because I just assumed you went to the grocery store as a farmer. Like, I just assumed that was the thing, because why do you have time to slaughter anything or, you know, bake your own bread or do all those things?
Or why would I slaughter my own? I mean, so I had a friend of mine who was a sheriff's deputy in the next county over, and he wanted to buy one of my hogs and he wanted to slaughter it on the farm. I was like, sure, let's do that. Well, that did not go the way I thought it was going to go. It was quite because I'm used to just loading them up, you know, you load them up. And that's the thing. I've never gotten attached to a pig, any hog. Mm-hmm. I mean, we usually have enough of them that they're but I've never had one where I was just like, oh, I really like this hog. Or, you know, I mean, there's been a couple, I guess, that I tolerated, but more often than not, there's nothing better than when the truck comes to load them up. Versus cattle, for a long time, for me, I had to, with cattle, when it was time for them to go, I'd leave. And my sons would help, but I didn't want to watch them. Chickens, my wife has always kept a lot of chickens. We've never done chickens. We tried doing chickens on pasture because their local butcher shop said that they would buy them all. We started with like 800, and by the time we were ready for processing, they were down to like 300 because of all the predators and, you know, and everybody's like, well, you get this, get an LGD, a large livestock guardian dog and all this stuff. And I was just like, okay, it just didn't work. You know, I kept my farm very natural on purpose because I want it to be natural. Yeah. So we have a very large woods, creek that runs right through the middle of the wood. And I just couldn't keep the predators away from the chickens. It didn't matter if it was hawks, owls, foxes, you name it, we had them.
Whatever. So, whatever could get at them. And I think that's interesting because you just made me think about how I've read some posts recently about people I don't know what particular part activist wise is upset, but how farmers don't care about the natural world and how they tear down their farm land and they destroy all the forests that are around them and stuff like that. And I thought to myself, have these people ever lived in the country? You know, have they lived in parts of the country that have farms? There's so much woodland.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if if they're talking about North American farmers, I have yet to meet a North American farmer that's cleared a woods in my generation. I mean, generations before, that happened in places, but I tend to try to make my farm as natural as possible. Like, you know, snakes. We have a lot of snakes here. They're particularly helpful because right now on our farm, we have about 27 miles of drip irrigation in the ground. So when it gets kind of droughty, mice will chew on that drip irrigation. Well, if the snakes are there, I mean, we notice that we want the snakes there eating the mice.
Yeah.
As far as like, I mean, I know in South America, there's a lot of deforestation and they claim it's for cattle grazing, but I also know it's being done for soybean production too.
It is. It's big farms,
So, I mean, there's both happening. And I mean, that just gives me more of a reason to support the American beef industry so that they don't have to clear cut a rainforest to graze cattle. Yeah, the vegan arguments though are often they're so poorly put together. Like they sit there and their favorite thing is they're like, no other animal on the planet drinks the milk of another species. That's like their biggest argument. Well, to me, also the big thing is anytime that you talk about eating meat as natural, or look what a lion does, or look what a bear does, or whatever, they always say, well, that's an appeal to nature fallacy. Well, so is their milk argument then. Because we're the only animal that flies in airplanes, and we're the only animal that drives around, and we're the only animal that creates things that we create. I don't know, with the exception of like an ant species, we're the only ones that actually keep, and they only keep aphids. They keep aphids around to basically milk their nectar. We have, what I like to say is I say we have turned into polite predators. We have taken our prey species and we have domesticated them. We give them the best lives we can to where they're only going to have one bad day, and we make sure that bad day is as quick and as painless as possible. Nature never guarantees anything like that for anything.
No, nature is violent.
Yeah. I mean, my dogs, I have German Shepherds, so... And what people aren't used to, people, especially in the dog culture that we seem to have in this country, where they're looked at more as kids than they are as pets. And that's fine. I look at mine as tools. I love them, but they still have a job to do on a farm. I've had people here when they've seen my dogs react to deer or react to animals that aren't supposed to be here. They're like, whoa, your dog's vicious. I'm like, no, my dog's being a dog.
Your dog is a working dog. Yeah.
That's a dog.
Yes.
Putting them in a sweater and pushing them around in a stroller, that is not a dog. I don't know what that is, but that's not what a dog was ever.
Maybe it's more of a modern dog take, I guess, instead of a working. We separate them by working dogs and modern dogs. I don't know. There's going to be a line there. Not to label it, but, to label it.
There's oftentimes, I was talking to a welfare scientist from Purdue University, and she's talked about a lady who she kept telling her, your Siberian Husky does not need a sweater.
No.
And she said she had put a sweater on this dog, and she was always concerned because the news media would say, hey, you need to bring your pets in, or they need to have shelter. Sure, your cockapoo or your Chihuahua isn't going to do well even when it's 30 degrees, but 30 degrees to a husky that's still probably warm to them, like my dogs, my county has a thing that says once they get to a certain, my German Shepherds, half of them are long coated and half of them aren't. The ones that are long coated, you can't get them to go, they won't even, they like to go and find like a snowbank and they go to sleep in it. And it's just like, yeah, that's not, somebody could call and be like, hey, he's torturing his poor dogs. I've had people call and say, call animal control and say that I have dead cows laying in my front pasture. And it's just the cows laying down, or dairy cows.
Why would they do that? Why are people like that?
Because the cows aren't moving. I had a FedEx guy that actually, he got out of the van and he's like, man, I'm going to have to talk to animal control. Because I had 2 Jersey cows. Uh-huh. And he was like, I can see their back ribs. I was like, good. That means they're not having a heart condition or anything because they're swollen. You're supposed to be able to see that. And I told him, I said, next to those 2 Jersey cows, there's 2 white part cows. They don't look underfed at all, but they're also, a different variety. I said, do you think I'm starving those 2 cows and letting those 2 cows eat all they want? I said, you just don't understand the different breeds have different things that they need.
Making assumptions is so dangerous. And especially if you don't know, you don't know the situation that's happening. I think a lot of people think that when they drive by farms, because if they're just driving by, they don't see what's actually going on. The other day I was coming home and I just recently moved to the country a couple months ago, and I have lived in the country prior. So this is not my first go around. And, I saw 80 chickens descend into a yard, and they looked like they were going to run into the road. And of course they weren't. They were fine. And then right next to it was some young horses, some newer foals were there, probably like, 1-2 years old. They must have been just weaned off. But they looked really teeny. They were really skinny compared to the horses that were right on the other side. And I thought, wow, somebody's going to say that these horses look malnutrition, but they're just young. They're just, They haven't put their weight on yet. They're not for riding as of the moment. And I thought, this is ridiculous. Like, people are going to say weird stuff. And then sure enough, I saw an article in the paper that said something about malnutrition horses at this particular farm and And I was like, what the hell?
It happens all the time. Yeah.
If you don't know, don't make a fuss. Just ask questions. Why can't people just turn their whatever this inner rage is into curiosity? I think that would get a lot more traction in the agricultural community if you came at it with a curious nature rather than you're wrong and animal abusing and crazy and you're just whatever. I don't even know.
We worked with a municipality. We did a joint farm park type of thing, and we had cattle there, and there was a neighborhood that was next to it, and cows make noises. They just do.
Yeah.
And when they see people, when they see people, especially when they associate people with food, they start making noises, whether they're hungry or not. And we were really careful we would basically feed these animals twice a day. They got hay and grain rations. They got their hay and then they got grain. And we came in one morning and this guy was standing there, and he was pissed. He was pissed. He goes, "Your cows were mooing all night. They look starved to death." And I had a young bull calf in there. And when I say young, he was like 2 months old. And I look over and I was like, "Yeah, dude, excuse me for a second." He had a piece of baling twine hanging out of his mouth. I couldn't figure out where he had gotten it from, but I jumped the fence. I ran up and basically yanked it out of his mouth. And then I look over and there's a bale of straw broke open. And he's like, "Well, I'm not going to say," he goes, "but I went up to Ace Hardware and I bought a bale of straw so they could eat something."
Stop. No, he did not.
I was like, "Well, number one, man, they eat hay. They don't eat straw. Straw's bedding." I said, "Number two, you just don't throw a hay bale into with any animals. You need to." I said, "If you need a vet to come out here and talk to you," so we ended up having to have a vet come and talk to the entire neighborhood of concerned people.
Oh my God.
And they were questioning the vet. They were like, "Oh, yeah, well, I grew up on my uncle's farm and blah, blah, blah." Or I would go visit my uncle's farm and his cows never did that. Or, and we had a mix of beef and dairy in there. And again, it was the question of, to the point to where a Humane Society came out and the lady's like, "I'm sorry."
Wow.
I come out because it's a complaint. The second I got here, I knew they were fine. I was like,
You wonder why the agriculture community distrusts everybody and everything. It's because of stuff like this. How the audacity to toss food, regardless if it was wrong or not, into a paddock is beyond. Why?
Well, we had a bull in there. We built our fence to where we knew that fence could hold this bull. And he was gentle, I guess, for a bull. He didn't like me, but we had signs up everywhere. They said, "No dogs. No dogs." Number one, I didn't want the dog. There were crops growing there too. I didn't want the dogs going into the field and
doing whatever they do. Yeah.
But on top of it, I didn't want the cattle getting spooked by strange dogs. I look over and this couple is standing there and their Great Dane is just barking. And Zeus, the bull, he's on the other side of the fence and he's shaking his head. And he's walking up and down and shaking his head. And I walked up to him and I said, "You guys, you can't have the dog here." And they're like, "Well, we came over from this way. We didn't see the signs." It's like, she goes, "But, he's never seen it." We kept telling him to stop barking. I was like, well, number one, had that been one of my dogs, I'd been like, "Yeah, your ass is going up right now. You don't get to be around him." But I looked at him, I said, "Hey, just so you know, with an animal like this, a fence is a suggestion."
Yes. I
said, "So had you irritated him enough, whether you've seen the agritourism sign or not, had he came across that fence and killed your dog and killed one of you, it'd have been on you." Because in the state of Indiana, as a farmer, I'm protected from that. You basically trespass to get to where you're at. There's not even supposed to be people over here. So
I don't understand why people do this and how it's like, I spent a lot of time in the UK because my fiance is British, and they walk through fields. They have signs up to say there's a bull, just shut the gate, do your thing, enter at your own risk, that kind of stuff. And they're footpaths. They have the right of way to be able to go through these areas, but nobody gets attacked by anything because they're not stupid. They pay attention to what's going on around them.
There was actually just a guy killed there in the UK.
Was there?
The bull went after his dog and he tried to stop it. And
that's different. Yeah. But that doesn't happen that often, does it, Jonathan? I mean, honestly, I feel like they've got a kind of a working relationship with the land rather than I'm just going to stand here and let my dog piss off a bull,
Probably. I mean, in America, we have I guess if I saw a random stranger walking through one of my fields, I'd be out there pretty quick to begin with. Just because we don't do that here.
Yeah, but that's not right away. They don't have right away. That's private property. That's different, right? And that's entirely different.
And the thing is, we have people come and they still don't understand anything about. You know how many people think that if a cow has horns or a head of cattle, if they have horns, they're boys?
Yes, I know many people who think that actually.
Yeah, I mean, They don't understand that. Like Zeus, I mean, Zeus was 2,000 pounds, and they're looking at him and they're like, well, how is he a boy and he doesn't have any horns? This is because this particular species just doesn't have horns, it's just the way it is.
Also, his name is Zeus. Maybe you should just take a clue right there from the name. Get away from it.
Yeah, his registered name was actually King Zeus, and he was a brute. I mean, he liked my wife, but man, anytime I walked into his pasture, I couldn't take my eyes off of him because he wanted a piece of me. So.
No, you don't mess with bulls.
Ans and Sage. And if you're in food production, agriculture, and even running a zoo or an aquarium, we need to talk. Because let's be honest, your operation relies on a lot more technology than most people realize. Grain dryers, hatchery controls, life support systems for animal habitats, all connected, all critical, all often overlooked when it comes to cybersecurity. That's where we come in. At Ans and Sage, we help industries that grow, feed, and inspire the world manage cybersecurity and operational risks. Without the fear tactics, the fluff, or the 200-page audit you'll never read. Whether you're producing milk, processing seafood, or running life support systems, we focus on what matters, keeping your operations safe, your people protected, and your business running, even when things go sideways. And hey, we know not everyone on your team speaks cyber. And because not everyone on your team speaks cyber, we've created a free resource library at andsandsage.com. Inside, you'll find sector-specific infographics built for teams in agriculture, seafood, zoos, and aquariums. They're clear, practical, a little witty, and designed to help frontline teams understand the risks without needing a translator. No logins, no email required, no catch, just usable tools that make cybersecurity stick. If you're responsible for keeping food moving, animals safe, and systems online, Ans and Sage is your partner in real-world resilience. Visit andsandsage.com to download your free infographics, book a consult, or just learn more about how we're helping critical infrastructures secure what matters most. Ans and Sage, helping the industries that grow, feed, and inspire the world manage cybersecurity and operational risks.
Like when you talk about AI on dairy farms, and I know a lot of your listeners are into the digital. AI is not artificial intelligence on the farm, it's artificial insemination.
Yeah.
And that has saved the lives of so many dairy farmers, it's not even funny. Because there is nothing worse than the dairy breeds. When it comes to the bulls of the dairy breeds, they might not be the biggest or the strongest, but they are by far the meanest. And they have no problem going after people. There's stories. I've talked to older farmers who, I had one farmer, he said that had he not had rotten wood on the side of his barn when the bull put him through it, the bull came through it with him. He said it probably would have crushed him, but he was able to go all the way through and kind of got flung to the side. But yeah, that they according to the animal rights folks, that's sexual assault on an animal.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's where we're at now. So.
Oh my God. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about people who just don't know and think that they're just safe because of the fence. It's kind of like when people go up to the enclosure and the glass enclosure at a zoo and start banging on it and think it's not going to disturb the animal on the other side. It's so frustrating to me that people just People are crazy. Like, they are really crazy. They don't think before they do something or say something. Instead of, like I said, we have to have a healthy curiosity about things around us. Otherwise, we get stuck in the cesspool that is normalcy, I guess.
I mean, I had a food writer actually flew out from California, but he was from Indiana. He was from Indianapolis. And he's like, I want to go to one of the old places that I used to go to. And it was like a breakfast and lunch place, but also a bar. It was weird.
Okay.
So, you know, I think he doesn't realize, like, I'm in Greenfield. I'm not in Indianapolis. So I have to drive into the city to meet him. But I get there. He was evidently didn't do any background on me as far as like what my beliefs are, as far as methodologies and stuff. And he was, first off, he starts telling me about he was getting a flight of bourbons, and it was like 9 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, dude, come on. I'm like, I'm good. I gotta go back to work. But he was telling me about all these different bourbons and everything like that. And he's like a bourbon connoisseur, like which company does this and that. And I was like, that's okay. And then he starts talking about monoculture. And he said the single most devastating crop that we were growing up. And I'm going, okay. And he's like, corn, this, corn, that. And I was like, dude, I'm not a bourbon expert, but my understanding of it, for it to be called a bourbon, is it's got to be Kentucky spring water and, you know, basically Midwestern dent corn is what you're using to make that bourbon. I mean, corn is the main ingredient. And he's like, oh yeah, but the corn that a lot of these distillers, you know, they use, I'm like, okay, I don't think that's
this
true.
guy is not educated. No.
Jim Beam isn't doing that. I mean, Jim Beam's looking for the best deal they can get on corn. But I was shocked that, and then unlike a lot of people that are on like social media, I've done a lot of like just regular media or earned media. And like I had a reporter that had came out and they wanted to get a shot they talked this like, so drive your tractor into the barn. And I was like, okay. So I go and I get on a Kubota. It's got a cab on it and it's a good size. It's a 100-horse tractor. They're like, no, that one. And they pointed to it's a 56 International 506 that I had. And I was like, okay.
Was it red? Was it red?
Oh, yeah.
That's why they wanted it.
And, you know, open station. So I fired it up and it's running. And so I drive it in and it's gas. So it's not even diesel, it's gas. So I drive it in. And as soon as I drive it in, I put it in park, I turn it off, and the camera guy climbs up on the front tire, has his camera like this, takes his hand and leans it right against the smokestack. And I was he like jumped off and I mean, it burnt the crap out of his hand. It reminded me of the Bill Engvall sketch where he talks about people needing to wear a sign so you know they're stupid, you know. And he talked about like, you know, this guy test drove his wife's minivan around that they were going to sell, and he got out of the car, reached down and grabbed the tailpipe. And he said, see, if he would have had a sign, I could have kept him from doing that. I could have said, I know you're not going to understand this, but that's going to be hot. And I remember thinking, my gosh, there really are people like this. So
it's kind of like the signs in American hotels, because this doesn't happen over anywhere else. And not to put clothes hangers on the sprinklers that are sticking out of the wall for the room. One
of my favorite things were we had gotten a contract that summer with a company out of Louisville, and they just wanted zucchini. And I mean, they were buying all the zucchini we were growing. So we had like 12 900-foot rows of zucchini growing in plasticulture. So really clean and lots of it. And we had a reporter that had come out and he's like, so besides food, you guys also do ornamental plants? And I was like, no. He goes, well, you guys have a ton of hostas growing over there. And I was like, hostas? I don't know what you're talking about. It was the zucchini. He thought they were hostas. And I just, that's zucchini.
Wow.
You know? But yeah, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we have a lot of work to try to right the ship to get people.
Isn't it so funny though, Jonathan? Like, this wouldn't have been a conversation probably 50, 60 years ago, really. People understood like what the plants look like that created their particular vegetables.
Right.
Or fruit. And now people are just oblivious, or they're buying whatever they see on the internet for the most part. And it's so discouraging, which is great. It's just great because you have a media company. So you have the ability to re-educate people in your own unique style. I'll say maybe not delicately or gently. You're just going to tell them what's up. I think that that's super important to do. That's part of the reason why I started the podcast. Sure, I'm a podcast about cybersecurity and technology and ag and food, right? But I talk about food and I talk about ag because we need to talk about it in a way that's, transparent and real, like we're talking about here. And I think punk rock farmer for you is perfect because you're a disruptor, ultimately.
Well, maybe the one thing I always hated about that moniker is I was like, man, that has a lot of baggage with it. Like
it does because punks are viewed as one way or the other, right? But
within the punk subculture, how many times? I get a message at least once a day, sometimes 2-3 times a day, that the most punk rock thing is being vegan. Punks are who founded veganism. Being punk rock was vegan.
I don't think that's true. Come on, people.
There was a subset of them that were. And I'm like, there was also a subset of punks that were Nazis. So
exactly. The definition of punk is anything that's against the norm, right? So...
Right, or just individualism.
Individualism, exactly.
Rugged individualism from like the late 1800s turned into punk rock in the early 80s,
technically Mozart was a punk, Beethoven was a punk. Like those are the original punks. You're right. And I don't think that you're dissuading the norm. You're challenging the norm. Because you're like, no, that's what you think. That's not what it is. And here's 10 examples why. Please don't touch my bull. Like it will eat you. And,
Or like the fact that like people will be like, oh, I can't believe that you grow genetically engineered crops. You're holding water for these big corporations that make them. And it's just like
people don't know what a GMO is, though. That's the problem. Well, they don't understand it.
It's not just that. It's just like, well, so you show me a punk band where they like created their own speakers, their own guitars. They crafted their own instruments.
That's an excellent way to say it. Yes.
Because I can promise you, Marshall and Gibson and all those companies, they're good sized companies. It's just a weird thing because I come from it from the aspect of the injustice I see is people being hungry. That's where I focus my injustice. Mm-hmm. And in America, people are hungry not because there's a lack of food. They're hungry because there's a logistics issue or there's an addiction
it's a food
issue.
Insecurity.
Yeah, it's a mental health issue. And there's a lot of children who suffer because their parents are dealing with these things. And to me, I'm just like,
It's so villainous, right? That we just have to paint things so negatively rather than, again, meeting it a curiosity and trying to understand what's going on and what's fact and what's not. I think that critical thinking lens has kind of been removed in a lot of ways because we're just spoon-fed everything. Well, we're here for all the puns.
Yeah, well, what I try to explain to like an animal rights activist is that even if the farmer doesn't give a shit about his animals, and I'll be brutally honest right now, mm-hmm. My cattle, oh my gosh, I would do whatever. I loved them. I loved my cattle. I hate hogs. But hogs have always been the most profitable animal for me. But one of the reasons why they've always been profitable for me is because I made sure they wanted for nothing. I made sure that they were in top health. Mistreating your farm animals, we know through practice that good welfare equals a good market outcome.
Yeah.
So even if the farmer's like heartless and all he cares about is profitability, well, then in order to be profitable, you have to have good, sound animal welfare. Because if you don't, you're not going to be profitable. You're just not. Vet bills, sick animals, underweight animals, any of that stuff. You animals will taste bad. That's actually been proven. They will taste bad. If
stressed out meat.
Yeah. You want your animals to have the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's what people don't understand, right? Especially the extreme radical ones. They get blinded. They don't see beyond that. When it comes to dealing with various aspects in agriculture, with the more technology we chuck at it and the more ag tech that comes in, is people need to stop making assumptions that farmers don't know what's going on. They're very clued in on their farm. It's their property. It's their lifestyle. It's everything, right? Of course, they're going to treat their animals well because they want them to have the highest market value so they can continue to keep the house and the roof over their head for their family. Right. Like these are common things, right? But because we've painted this picture of what we think a farm looks like, it's not always happy land, right? A farm can be a really sad place sometimes. It can be a really hard place sometimes, but it's called life. You literally see life from birth to death, all the way through the spectrum in your cycle of your seasons. I don't think there's really any other professions, maybe if you work in a hospital, that have similar vibes.
Well, I mean, it's not just that. Like people, I can honestly say my main farm occupation is I'm a vegetable producer.
Yeah.
Animals are like they just kind of help on the side. And I think if anybody who was what I'll call, like my wife, one of her best friend, she's vegan, it was never ever about animals to her. She just didn't. And she got to the point to where I think she kind of just became a vegetarian. But being vegan had nothing to do with a ethical stance. Same. And I say vegan, what she ate. I mean, she wore leather shoes and stuff like that. So
yeah, no, I still use honey, right? Because technically that doesn't make you pure unless you completely cut out all animal products.
But if they would come to my farm and see, so like as a vegetable producer, I can't no-till. I actually have to plow. And then after I plow, we run rototillers. Used to disc, but now we just run a big rototiller across it. And then we shape our beds and, we do all that stuff. They have no idea how much death that creates right there. Then from there, my entire season is spent battling insects. Now, whether some vegans, they don't care about insects, some do. But it's not just insects, it's rabbits. My dogs are trained. They see a rabbit there, go kill it right then and there. They're running deer. We used to kill deer. We just shoot them all. And we got to the point to where we train the dogs to go after deer, but at the same time, you still always have that occasional problem. It needs to be depopulated, so we take that deer out. But not just that, the fertilizer I used. And I'm talking about conventional fertilizer. I'm not talking about organic. Mm-hmm. Organic fertilizer, number one, is almost all, as I say, blood, bones, and guts. But a lot of my fertilizer, it utilizes animal products. Without the animal industry, and I'm not growing corn and soybeans, I'm growing the stuff that you go into the grocery store, and you can walk out in the field and 90% of it, you can pick it and start eating it right there. It's ready to go. So that is something that, and I've had those debates where they're like, well, there is veganic agriculture. Well, I've looked into that. No, there really isn't. Not if you're talking about feeding our population, there's not. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah. Because there's no yields off of that stuff. There's no system set up in place for it. I mean, it's a poor methodology that it's just insufficient. I just think it's odd because I'll meet vegans. They're like, I only eat organic food. Well, if it's organic, I guarantee you're consuming the same blood. You're just doing it further downstream because without that, we can't grow these crops. And
if they're drinking a glass of wine, you can look at them sideways too, because that also involves animal production. So, it's really strange. We could go on about this for a long time. It's very frustrating. You got me thinking though, when you were talking, that the systems that are set up around agriculture are really suppressing the farmer from really doing their job. It's becoming complicated, whether it's policy or regulations or anything. And then on top of that, you have to deal with radical whoever activists causing havoc, doing really awful things. And then you've got this disinformation, misinformation that the general public thinks that you do. If you say you're a farmer, they're like, cool. They don't really get it. They have no idea. Not that that's fine.
Or they think you're trying to poison them. I mean,
correct.
They think the documentary.
They think you're actively in your fields at night, putting chemicals in.
Yeah. I had somebody come to me and say, you should really try regenerative agriculture. I'm like, okay. Cool. I was like, they're like, well, you could let your like the cattle could like eat the grass that's growing between your rows.
And then move your animals. Yeah.
And I'm like, number one, I don't want my cattle doing what they do where there's crops that people are going to eat, but I've heard, I guess I approach everything as a realist, I think there's a place for all these different types of agriculture.
Yeah.
But when you start telling people that this is the only way to do it and this is the healthy way of doing it and they start basically bullying people. There was a farm that I followed on Facebook for a long time. I thought they were the coolest farm. And then they went down like this weird trail that, if you're not doing this, and this, you're bad, you're poisoning the land, this and that. I'm just like, okay, but there's a lot they don't understand the complexities. If you take like Indianapolis, 930,000 people. Do they know how much farmland it takes to feed those people? They're 25 tomato plants. And I mean, they're mostly like a homestead. That's really what they are. And they're like 5 cows. That barely feeds them. So they're saying that's how everybody should do it. Well, not everybody can do that. Not everybody has access to that. Do they know? I mean, look at how many people live in apartment complexes, or they lived in government subsidized housing. And, I don't participate. That's why I grow my own. You grow your own because you're able to.
Yeah.
You don't grow your own because you have to. You don't grow your own because you grow your own because you're able to. And just because you're able to do that doesn't even mean that you're getting the best. Like, I hate the word clean food. I hate that versus what's not clean. I guess it's whatever your definition happens to be. That is Twinkies clean food? Probably not. I mean, it's probably not good for you, but I'm not going to label them as a dirty food. I mean, to me, a dirty food's kale. I mean, kale is the nastiest food on the planet. I would say that that's not a clean food because it's so gross.
I always say I look at leafy greens with a healthy suspicion.
Yeah. I mean, these people that have, especially in the last 2 years, that have kind of come out of the woodwork, it's like, you do it my way, or if it's not my way, then it's bad. And it's just like, you don't understand the complexities of the food system. You don't understand how many people have to be fed.
Yeah, it's not black and white. It's a very gray area, right? Because different regions are going to do different things, transportation-wise, housing-wise, warehousing rather. Different aspects of how you raise cattle is different in the western part of the country versus, the eastern part of the country. It's different. I think everybody needs to calm down. Like, that's a good start. And I also think that people need to start listening to each other rather than listening to respond, or listening with curiosity. I feel like that's the theme of this show, is listening with curiosity. You've taught me some stuff, and you've also validated me that I'm not an idiot. So that makes me feel really good. So thank you for that, Jonathan. I'm like, yes, I know. I used to live in a cattle ranch. My house was into the cattle ranch. It was a mile into it. And the cows hated my guts. Every time I got near the fence, they took off, and I didn't have a problem with that. But I saw more of the natural world represented in that small little acreage that I was on for that yearish, that taught me so much that I didn't know. And I was speaking to a rancher recently, and she was telling me that people want to move to the country because they want a different lifestyle, because it's too overpopulated, too oversaturated in the city now. Which is fine, whatever. If you like city living, I'm not picking on you. I like city living too, because convenience is great, right? It's great to have conveniences, but you can't move to the country and then tell people what to do who have been there for 150 years worth of generations of farming, or that their farm smells bad or something like that. What? This is what I have trouble with, is you have to switch your mindset and be open to things. And I'm worried about what's going to happen to the farms in general. I mean, we need farmers, obviously, because we need to eat. But what does farming lifestyle look like if you constantly have people, whether it's governmental regulations, state regulations, international regulations, whatever's happening, and then now you have to deal with people hacking your farm, or activists using hackers to hack your farm? The stress level. So first of all, Jonathan, thank you for farming. I'm going to say this. Thank you for farming. Thank you for providing vegetables. I think it's cool you're growing purple tomatoes. And, thank you for sticking with it, because it's one of those industries where sort of why do I bother if everybody's just going to tell me what to do? I'll just sell my farm off and go sit on an island. You know what I mean? Or something like that. But thank you for sticking with it. And then on top of it, you're an activist for your community. I should say activist in quotations. You're not really an activist.
Actually, I call myself that. Everybody calls themselves an advocate. I call myself an agvitist.
I like that.
I will happily, I guess I look at it like my Molotov cocktails are metaphorical, but I'm still willing to throw them. I'm still willing to go after what needs to go after. I'm not willing to. When I see somebody talk about an ag leader and I see a guy in a suit and tie, I'm not saying a farmer can't be in a suit and tie, but I'm sick and tired of that being represented because that's why people think it's big ag. I mean, that right there, when you have, or politician, any politician, they come out of the woodwork to get their picture with you come election time. I mean, farmers are like another minority group. Oh, look, I support the farmers, but do you really? I don't know. I mean,
I think people are so displaced from it because they just go into a grocery store and get it whatever they want without thinking about where it came from. We're so far removed from our food system that we don't even know how to protect it anymore. And it's frustrating.
Ever try managing industrial cybersecurity risk with spreadsheets. Yeah, we've been there too. At Anson OT, we're changing the game for OT risk management. No more clunky tools, no more siloed data, just a smarter, faster, and usable way to understand and reduce your risks, whether you're in food production, energy, manufacturing, or anywhere critical infrastructure keeps the world running. Built by folks who've lived the pain, literally conducting OT risk assessments worldwide, Anson OT brings together cybersecurity, safety, environmental, and industry-specific standards in one clear, intuitive platform. We're the first to combine AI-driven insights with scenario-based modeling so you can not only see your current risk, but also be prepared for what could happen next. And with built-in playbooks, you won't be left scrambling when things go sideways. It's everything industrial cybersecurity management should be. Simple, smart, and swift. Learn more at ansonot.com and see why critical infrastructure leaders trust us to help them stay operational, safe, and resilient.
I tell people, like they talk about around here, friends of mine who are farmers, they don't like the amount of suburban folks that are moving in. And,
Understandable.
They buy like 3 acres and they build a house on it. We had somebody do that close to us, and I got to know the guy. I mean, he's a software engineer. I mean, he's a smart guy, and he's likable. It was weird because I hear engineer. I didn't think he'd have that much of a personality.
Stigma-wise, yes.
Yeah, I mean, but like for the first 3 months, he'd like come over and was just like fascinated. Not a single, hey, I don't like this. It was all, this is so freaking awesome. He brought his kids over a couple of times, but they had been there for about 3 months, and he came over and he's like, I can't find my dog. I didn't even know the guy had a dog. He said, yeah, I let him out. They don't have a fenced-in yard. I mean, they got like 3 acres. He let him out. Well, it was a Yorkshire Terrier.
Oh, no.
And he can't find it. He says, well, he's been gone for like 3 days. I called animal control. And I was like, man, I'm going to have to be like brutally honest with you. The likelihood of that dog being eaten by like an owl or a coyote. I mean, My dogs wouldn't hurt it if it came over, but if they went to another place, there's farmers around here. They got some mean dogs for a reason. We lock our gate now, which I don't like. That's something, we are 30 miles from Indianapolis, but I woke up one morning and my camera's going off. Someone had drove down my driveway and they backed there. It was a minivan with a wagon in the back of it, and they had backed it up to our barn. Now, our barn is kind of a ways from our house, but I was like, well, they're probably not supposed to be here. I'm not sure what's going on. And so I thought, I'm going to walk out and see what's going on. And I looked at him on the cameras and I could see the one dude. He's looking around like I'm looking around. So all I simply did was I walked over to my garage and I let 5 German Shepherds out, and they seen a strange car and they immediately went to it. And I watched the camera. He heard him barking and got in his van and he drove off. And then another car is coming down my driveway at one point, or it was like a van coming down my driveway. So my driveway is a 1/4 mile long. So I get in my truck and drive out to meet them because I don't know who they are. I want to know what they're doing at my farm at 6:30 in the morning. As my truck moves, I look, they stop, they put it in reverse, actually drove into a field and went back the other way and went straight and left. We put up a gate so that people would stop doing that. One morning I looked and a car, it was a white minivan, I remember this, drove around my gate and was coming back to my barn. And I was just, I called the sheriff's department. And, we had an incident where we did have animal rights activists show up here at one point, but that was in the middle of the day and they came like they were wanting to start something. They didn't. As soon as they were met by, it was 2 of my sons who are both over 200 pounds and they look like the typical kid you'd find on a farm, and then some guys who are working here. Mm-hmm. And, they left. Yeah. That's something. We did put cameras up. At one point, it's kind of died down a little bit, but at one point we had like 3 months where we had 800 death threats. I had 800 death threats.
For what reason? Because you were raising animals?
Animal rights. Well, because I write about it. I was very vocal. I was talking about it on 2 radio stations.
Why? Why,
I talked
Jonathan,
about it.
why would, I'm sorry to interrupt, and this is because I'm just like, whoa. Why would someone who is pro-animal life make a death threat on a human being who is also an animal? Make that make sense to me, please.
That, I don't understand that. But what I try to explain to people is this. Well, because I look at it, I think veganism, when you take a vegan, like an actual vegan, I'm not talking about somebody that's, I'm going to try this because I've tried everything else. I want to try this. I'm talking about somebody that says, I live the vegan lifestyle. They buy the shoes that say vegan on those kind of people.
The radical vegans,
Yeah. To me, it's a religion. If you look at everything they do, everything they say, they have, veganism has rules, veganism has this. It's no different than a religion. They just don't have an organized leader. And then people say, well, and these are like crazy extremists. Well, are they though? Because Oregon's getting ready to fight another ballot initiative. And they've gotten over 70,000 signatures. Colorado almost fell. If it wouldn't have been for Colorado Farm Bureau and some other folks, they would have been in trouble. Even here, we had something happen almost, I want to say it was 8 years ago, where the Humane Society tried to sneak something in. And luckily the hunters all got together and we were able to defeat it. But yeah, it's awful. And they're in the halls of Congress lobbying our representatives. I mean, we need to take them as a serious threat.
There's lobbyists for everything. I'm not surprised to hear that.
Except they have combined, I think the last thing we read, they have about $3 billion to be able to do this. I don't think Farm Bureau has that.
No, well, I mean, I don't know for a fact, but who knows, right? I guess I'm concerned with the fact of they think that if they eliminate animals and consumption, nobody eats animals any longer, that we're going to sustain off of vegetables. Who's going to do that work if you've is there a plan? It doesn't sound like there's a plan. It just sounds like you're being disruptive to be disruptive.
Yeah,
your ideology.
I know from what I grow standpoint, it's brutal work. I mean, it's not, there are, like, I look at dairy farming. I could never be a dairy farmer. I am not committing to waking up at 4 a.m. and being tied to my farm 365. I think dairy farmers probably have the most, like that to me would be the hardest type of agriculture just because you're tied to the farm. But like from basically mid-June when our crops start coming in until first frost, I mean, we're not gardeners. I mean, we have to go out, we have to strip plants, we have to meet our contracts, we have to, if it's 98 degrees, we still have to go pick in an open field. And there's almost everything I grow is fresh market. So there aren't machines, if there were, I'd own them, but there aren't machines that will pick these things. I wish there were, but there's just not.
Maybe someday, but not in the foreseeable future, I'm sure. I think ag tech is such a baby industry. It still hasn't, I think it's going over after the low hanging fruit, to use a pun, but it's not going to come up with like full functional stuff like that for a while, I don't think. And we'll see if it's adopted anyways, right? Like, who knows?
Right. Well, I mean, it's one of those things like if you talk to a produce farmer, they might be growing, they might have 20 acres of strawberries. Mm-hmm. And somebody goes, well, is that a farmer? He's only doing 20 acres. Well, yeah, it's a farmer because 20 acres of strawberries.
That's a lot.
If it was 20 acres of soybeans, no, that would not be worth the diesel. But it's 20 acres of strawberries. I interned on a tomato farm that supplies to Publix and Myers in Florida. And it was only 72 acres. I mean, that was it. And it was one of the larger fresh market tomato growers there are in the country. I mean, it was huge. I had a ton of laborers, but, people don't realize that when you're talking about, like, I do 46 acres right now. The most I've ever farmed of produce was 113. And you talk to the average person and they're like, 113 acres. Well, my uncle had, 2,000 acres in Illinois that he farmed. But you talk to another farmer, like a corn or soybean guy, say, yeah, I do 113 acres of produce. They're like, oh my gosh. They couldn't imagine doing that, Mm-hmm. Sometimes 5 acres, that's a USDA market garden. I mean, that's not a small operation. 7 acres or bigger in produce is considered a large scale produce operation. So people don't understand that, or the fact that there's orchards that are part of agriculture. Vineyards are part of agriculture.
Yes, they are.
Beekeeping is part of agriculture,
Which they're a national treasure now. Beekeeping is we have to protect beekeeping.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, we had bees at our farm, and our beekeeper, I'm not a beekeeper, nor do I want to be a beekeeper. As a matter of fact, that was the first time we filmed the whole thing, and it was literally, you put on the bee suits and everything. If you have not done that, if you've not actually put on the bee suit and you have 36 hives in front of you and they're cracking them all open basically at the same time, the amount of bees, like, you can feel the heat when they're, I eventually turned to one of the beekeepers and like, I can't see. And he's like, use your windshield wiper, clear them away, just real gentle, clear them away. But they're all pissed and they're all like right there. Cause normally they're not pissed. I mean, normally they're, we can work right up against the hives. They don't care. And, just seeing how hard that was. And then we followed them from here to taking them and putting them in the hot room, and from the hot room to where, I'm in like a cutoff shirt, and people are like, I was like, I hope people don't think I'm just like wearing a cutoff shirt. We're in cutoff shirts because it's like 112 degrees while we're doing this honey to keep it flowing. And it was not easy work. Now, do those guys work as hard as a produce farmer or a dairy farmer? I think they do. The problem is it's condensed. It's condensed when they set their hives, and then it's condensed when they collect the honey. They're not having to do it year round, of course.
And not only that, they're getting stung occasionally, and
Right. I can actually say that I had, they told me the amount, I think it was 18 million bees were on my farm. And that entire summer, I did not get stung by a bee one time.
Wow.
Not once.
Well, they were busy.
I got stung by hornets and wasps.
Those guys are just nasty.
Yeah, but I never got stung by a bee. So yeah, that's the thing that people don't understand. Like people that if you're in hog production, I don't have like a big hog house. The way I've always done hogs is I have them inside and outside. Mm-hmm. I guess I would still consider them confined. I mean, they're confined to they have an outside paddock to where it's big enough for them to go and do their thing, but they also 90% of the time they were inside. Like they had the choice to be out in the sunshine. Like people say, oh, hogs want to be out in the sunshine. 90% of the time they were inside. The barn was cooler. That's where, there was food and water outside, but there was food and water inside. So they always chose the inside, just like we would. And during the wintertime when I've had hogs, they don't want to go outside at all. That now, and I'll be honest, I see like some of these homesteads that have hogs that are acclimated to that environment. It's cold. Well, that hog's, they're hairy and whatever else.
Yeah.
But I've also seen hogs that they're production hogs that somebody went and bought at a livestock auction that has no business being outside. It really doesn't. So there's all kinds of things that are out there for information. People have these homesteads and they're seeing them and they're thinking homesteading is great. Like Joel Salatin, the way he does hogs is how our great grandfathers did it because they didn't really have a choice. So he didn't invent anything. We've just become more efficient at it. And when people say, well, those hogs have to be happier, well, why? Because in your mind, as a human being, you'd want to be able to free roam. But if you actually look at the cortisol level test, they're almost equal. Or the fact that when you're pasturing chickens, the stress level in chickens that are inside a house are lower than they are in pastured chickens because pastured chickens are jungle fowl. So they're used to having a canopy over their head. And when you put them out on pasture, they're constantly looking up for raptors. So yeah, that's one of those things that I want everybody to do it however they want, but I also want them to don't run down another producer.
Yeah, don't
that's
shame
what I
anybody.
See all the time. Yeah, that is like the key thing I see now constantly on social media is our cows don't have this, or this, or our chickens don't have this, or this, and they're better. And the other guy does this, and this to his chickens. And I'm like, if you have to run down another producer, you're not selling a better product. You're selling fear. Period. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. And that's why I think you and I both have a similar philosophy of we're going to speak truth, but we're not going to be on a bumper sticker or shock value aspect to it, because the truth is what it is. And there's been some issues in the food industry. There was 2 breaches that almost happened because of insider threat. And one of them was chemicals on a chicken processing facility was added. And thankfully it was caught before it became a problem. And the other one was Disney. Somebody manipulated the allergens database essentially and changed it so it looked like things were not allergen induced, but they were. And I've had interactions online about this already where people kept saying, oh, we've raised alarms and we've done these things, but nobody took it seriously. My response back was, where did you raise those alarms? Somebody said to me the other day, don't give us checklists. We hate checklists. Okay, I won't give you a checklist. What do you want to know? I think it's just a matter of meeting people where they are rather than expecting people to be on your knowledge set or treating them like they're oblivious. I don't want to live in a world where people can't eat. Jonathan, I think you're the same way as I am. I want people to be able to have fresh, healthy food whenever they need it, wherever. I don't want children to go hungry. I don't want anyone to go hungry. But I do not like this capitalist kind of thing we've done to our food system on top of already complicating it another way where people can't afford apples, but they can afford a hamburger. I don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, why does a can of Coke cost more than a red bell pepper?
Exactly.
Because I can tell you what I'm getting for a red bell pepper. I mean, when we're growing them to scale, I mean, we're getting 12 to 15 cents per red bell pepper.
Well, people don't understand that it's the grocers that set the price, right? So the whole egg crisis is not necessarily what people think it is. And I've tried to explain it to people. And then, of course, it gets a little complicated because the breeding situation and how that happens and who controls the breeding. And I don't need to say that. I think you understand what I'm saying. I think people are misinformed. And that bothers me a lot because that's going to hurt the farming community and the agricultural side more than it's going to hurt the consumer, because the consumer is just going to move on and go to whatever they go to and it's fine. But the agricultural community has to pick up the pieces of people's misunderstanding and mild distrust, where you're already a distrusting sector anyways, because look at people just drive onto your property and do weird things to your house and your barn and your animals, or tell you you're doing weird things to your barn or house or animals. So there's this complete disregard for the food system as a whole, and we've overcomplicated it, and the distribution of it is overcomplicated, and it stands on pillars that are easily broken down. JBS showed us that incident, various other things have showed us this incident. What do you hope for in the future? Because we're going to wrap up here because we've definitely had a very wild conversation.
I would like to see I want to call it like a semi-local. I would like to see like semi-local processors, food companies that basically mimic our national food system. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying take away the national food system. I'm saying keep it. Yes. And then also having these as secondary, these food systems that are secondary that can do things, that have the logistics, that have the warehousing ability. Mm-hmm. And that way we can, if something like COVID happened again, it would be that much more resilient, or like what happened with JBS. I mean, the whole point of, the fact that we have how many again, not being a meat, not like being huge on like meat production. What is it? Three meat producers or 3 processors basically control 80% of the market.
Same thing with chickens. Chickens and egg houses are the same.
Yeah. And like, I will say this, like with the tariffs, I know the tariffs are bad. I would love nothing better though than to see tariffs put into place on countries that are putting produce farmers like myself out of business, because I can't hire people to work for, $2 a day. Mm-hmm. My diesel fuel is not subsidized. I've lost contracts to Mexico, and I've told people, whether it's Mexico, wherever it might be where they're growing these things, I had the opportunity to see one of those farms, and I was shocked at, no wonder they're coming here to work on our farms, because it's practically slave labor. It really is. It's almost slave labor. I actually learned from a young woman. I read it, and then we got to meet her in Immokalee, Florida. But she talked about her uncle had died in the field. And the company that was an American company, but it was not. He had traveled to another country. It wasn't in the United States, but he had died in the field. And before they agreed to ship his body back home, they said, will we get his last paycheck to cover our expenses of shipping his body back home? And I was just like, that's who we're having to compete against. And I can't do that. And anybody that works on my farm, if I'm audited through gaps, they've got to know all of our procedures and everything. Yeah. And that's the other thing. People think that like the gaps that you have to, the gaps in the pre-gate and the post-gate inspections, they think that those are put into place by the government. And they blame the government for those. Those are not put in place by the government. That is the grocery industry. And the grocery industry, I believe, has done that. And my belief is so that they can get cheaper produce. They rely on very large-scale farm operations. And I mean large-scale that are corporate-owned. Not all of them, because I'm not corporate-owned, and I'm a GAP-certified farm. We do pre-gate inspections. But those were put into place to make it hard, because there's no reason why, a guy I know in the next county has a very awesome greenhouse operation. He just thinks it's too complicated to get involved in it, but he could be selling his produce regionally. That's how I look at it. We sell our produce regionally. We have, with the exception of one time we sold watermelons through a broker who then sold them to Walmart. They went all the way down to Texas, but 2 of the skids came all the way back to Indiana. I only found out from the broker, but people were like, they were labeled like local watermelons. Yeah, they're local after they took a round trip to Texas and came back.
It's wild.
So, there's just crazy stuff like that.
From a consumer side, just briefly, we can talk about this. This is why it's so important to buy local, like actually local or regional as best as you can. I know the labeling is confusing sometimes and how you get it is confusing, and people complain that it's more expensive, but that money's going directly back to the farmer or the farming community. Right. And I think people need to start voting with their currency rather than giving corporations who already have billions more money.
Yeah, that's what I mean by like the semi-local or the regional local. Mm-hmm. If we had something like that where the farmer was getting a larger share of the food dollar, if they were getting the larger share of the food dollar, that would make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Because, the grocery marks it way up. But, with me, with the exception of sweet corn and watermelon, anytime I've sold directly to a grocery store, that's the only thing I've done. Anything else that goes to a grocery store from my farm is going via. I think,
again, it's a perception of the public that either you are a very poor farmer or you are a very rich farmer. And, the media has portrayed that for us so great in the Yellowstone series, right? Making cattle ranching just look.
Yellowstone's made it so much easier. I can't think of how many guys I've killed on my farm. Yeah.
There's a lot of murder. There's a lot of murder there. But the fact that they had helicopters and all these other things, and I'm not saying that some of those operations don't have that, but people don't realize that those are not necessarily family owned, and it's different. Right. And then if you want to think about it from a different perspective, like Australian farms, they have to use helicopters. They're that large. So there's right. Such a perception issue. I just wish people would take time to get educated and not believe everything they saw right away. Hey, I should question that.
Or even this, when they see a farmer with a very expensive piece of equipment, instead of just going, that must be nice, they need to ask, why are they, we were using drones. So we have a drone that we use that it doesn't spray. That'll be our next purchase. But its whole purpose is to inspect crops. Mm-hmm. And the time it took to walk the crops was unbelievable versus my son, Daniel, he can fly a drone and he can start looking for telltale signs of either disease or whatever because he's flying the drone pretty low.
Yeah.
We utilize that, and that saved us lots of money. And that's when drones were still kind of expensive. Our next drone, I think it's going to cost like $34,000, but it'll be a spray drone because
the return on investment on that is huge for you.
Well, right now, if I have to spray everything, the old way used to be just to spray everything. But now using a drone to inspect, okay, we found a section that needs a fungicide applied. We do that. And then, with the spray drone, we can even spray the fungicide. That actually saves us labor. Labor is our most expensive cost.
Yeah, of course it is. And also that's precision farming.
Yeah.
Really?
It's been around for a while. And it's something that, I don't know. It's just, I think about somebody who looks at how much a tractor costs. Well, but think about that thing that tractor does for the farmer.
Yep.
Can he use an old piece of equipment? Sure. Some guys prefer that, but not everybody.
And you're not going to tell someone what's right and wrong in that regard anyways. If they want to use the fancy new tractor, cool. If they want to use what they've been using, cool. It doesn't matter because it doesn't affect you at the end of the day. It's whatever they want to do.
My neighbor, I can always tell when he's planting or if his son's planting, because when he's planting, he's got his markers out. and that's what he's using. But his son uses the GPS.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I told him, I said, aren't you? And he's like, no, I don't trust GPS. And that's fine. He doesn't, he's still, I mean, I don't know that he's getting that much less of a yield. He might be, but that's the way he wants to do it.
And also it's good to, know how to do it the old school way because the GPS can get knocked out by things like solar flares, which we've already found out last year. So yeah. I think that that's good to have kind of a discipline to go back, but also I understand, wanting to get the most out of you can. And the GPS obviously is superior in that regard. Jonathan, thanks so much for this. This has been super enlightening for me. I hope our listeners also find it to be super enlightening. I'll put all of your information in the show notes. Is there anything you want to say before we sign off?
This has been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Huge thanks to Jonathan for taking the time out of his very busy, very real, and very demanding schedule to talk to us. He definitely made me think differently about a few things, and I hope you walked away with something to chew on too. You'll find all of Jonathan's links and information in the show notes if you want to follow his work or learn more about the topics that we've covered. As always, if you liked what you heard, share it. Send it to a friend, post it, leave a comment, hit the stars, whatever works for you. It helps more people find this conversation and also shows support for the show. And if long form is more your thing, or you just want the uncensored version of my thoughts, head over to Substack. That's where I talk through what doesn't fit into audio, unpack what's going on in food and agriculture, and share updates on the book and beyond. As always, stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.